Hello, it's Simon Zutshi here. And in this video, I'm going to share with you information about the renter reform bill. Now, some investors are calling this the end of property investing. It's doom and gloom. Some renters are saying it's a real victory for tenants. I've got mixed views about this, but I want to go through what's being proposed and explain to you the impact on you as a landlord and also on the property market, because it is definitely going to have an impact on the UK property market. Now, this is what the English government is calling a once-in-a-generation set of reforms. It's not been finalised yet. It's really important to understand that. This is open to debate and to change, etc. But I think it's important we understand what is being proposed. And this is probably the biggest change in the rental market for the last 35 years since the introduction of the AST contracts in England and Wales back in 1988 under the Housing Act. Now, by the way, I'd love you to please like this video and of course subscribe if you're not a subscriber, and hit the bell icon to make sure you get information on these videos whenever they come out. It really helped me and the algorithms, and more people will see this information. So I really would encourage you to do that. Now, the reality is that people don't like change. None of us like change. We're habitual creatures. And this will be the final straw for many old school landlords who are just fed up with all the government changes, the taxation, the regulations, things that are coming in, meaning it's not as good to be a landlord as maybe it was a decade or two ago. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not a good time to invest. In fact, because of what's going on, if you know what you're doing, now could be a really good time to get into the property market. For me, I think this is one of these typical knee-jerk reactions where bad news comes out. People don't really understand. They assume all these various things. And actually, I think it's quite good. Some things coming in, I think, are good for tenants. Some things coming in are going to be good for landlords as well. But I'd love to hear your view. So why not comment below? Let me know what you think about the Renters Reform Bill. Now, this bill has been introduced by Michael Gove, the English government housing secretary, and it's been on the cards since 2019. In fact, the Labour Party have been criticising the Conservatives. It's taken so long for this to come out. And there are lots of things involved. I'll try and break it down step by step for you, my understanding of what's being suggested. Remember, this is not final yet. This is what they're proposing. So the biggest change, this is something that's been on the cards for a while, is the removal of Section 21, the abolition of that, because they're getting rid of the no-fault evictions. What that means is the landlords can't just get rid of someone for no reason. I think that's probably fair enough, really. However, the government are widening the criteria for things like antisocial behavior, which is still one of the reasons you can get rid of people for. And I think that's good. Obviously, you can get rid of tenants who are just not behaving themselves. And luckily, the NRLA, the National Residential Landlord Association, they're governing, so they're lobbying the government to improve the court service to make sure that when these issues come up in court, they can be dealt with very rapidly. Now, there are basically 4 exemptions to evictions. So generally, you won't be able to just get rid of someone. And by the way, this isn't coming in straight away. It's probably going to be by the end of 2024, it's going to come in. There are 4 reasons you get rid of people. So the first one is if someone's in rent arrears, you can get them out. But there are very specific criteria when a judge will have to rule that that tenant is evicted. So for example, if someone is 2 months late on their rent, on 3 separate occasions, that is an automatic eviction. If someone is 2 months late when you apply to take them to court, and then actually on the day of the court appearance, they're still 2 months late, again, the judge can rule to get them evicted. However, these things can be manipulated. You know, sometimes tenants don't pay, then when they go to court, they pay a little bit of rent, so they're not 2 months behind. So all this can be, unfortunately, manipulated by tenants who understand how to play the system. Now, as I mentioned before, antisocial behavior is one of the things that people can still get evicted for. And I think that's good, because sometimes people are just not looking after properties. They're causing real nuisance. And I think personally, they should be evicted for that. The third one, this is interesting. If a landlord wants to sell a property, then in that case, they can get rid of the tenants, but they need to give 4 months notice to the tenant they intend to do that. Or the other thing they can do is if a landlord wants to move into the property themselves with their own family, they can can do that. And again, they need to give notice to the tenants about that. And then actually there's a ban for 3 months after that where they can't relet it. So you might think that this could be a backdoor way of landlords saying, well, I'm going to sell the property. You need to move out, or I want to move in, getting with the tenants, and then later on re-advertising it. So that 3-month ban is supposed to stop that. I think that's probably open to some manipulation and some abuse probably. So a lot of details that need ironing out still. And the devil is going to be in the detail with all these changes. The next thing is, oh, by the way, I'm actually thinking about that last one. It just goes to show that a lot of these policies are put together by civil servants, probably the blob that we're hearing a lot about at the moment, who just don't understand property investing. And let me explain what I mean. So let's say a landlord owns a property, and they might well own that outright. Might be an inherited property, might be one they lived in for years, they paid the mortgage off, in which case, if they want to move back in, they can obviously move back in if they want to. But what you need to understand is the vast majority of landlords have buy-to-let mortgages, which is a specific mortgage based on the property where they're renting the property out, and they're not allowed to live in that property. It's a breach of the terms and conditions of the mortgage. So the reality is the vast majority of landlords cannot move back into their rental property. So having that as a reason why someone can evict tenants is probably not very practical, because it's not actually likely to happen unless, of course, as I've said before, there's no mortgage on the property, when, of course, they can move back into that property if they want to. Another change is to the rental contracts in themselves. So AST contracts, which we have in England, typically they're for a 6-month fixed period, and then they go on to a revolving periodic contract, where currently the tenants can give 1 month's notice to move out after that initial 6 months, and the landlords have to give the tenants 2 months' notice if they want them to move out. Now, the proposal is that all contracts become rolling periodic contracts. So in other words, no fixed terms. Now, in that situation, the tenants have to give 2 months' notice. So they're doubling up the amount of time that tenants have to give. But in theory, someone could move into a property and straight away they can give notice and they can move out within 2 months. Now, that's not very good for landlords. If you want to put tenants in ideally for a good period of time, that's why we have 6-month contracts. Imagine someone just wants to stay somewhere for 2 months, very short-term rental. They could move in, give notice straight away, and then move out in 2 months' time. So that is really not good for landlords, because when you have tenants move out, you have void periods between tenants, which means you're not getting any rental income coming in. So that is a problem that could seriously affect the rental income coming in for landlords. So I guess you need to be careful when selecting tenants to make sure, do I think this tenant really wants to stay here for a long time, or are they just using this for a short-term accommodation? So that's something that I think is going to be a little bit of a problem here. Now, also, you might think, well, hang on a minute, if we don't have any fixed term contracts, how on earth are we going to do rent reviews? Because normally at the end of an AST 6-month period or 12-month period, that's when you would review the rents. So you can't do that anymore. What they're talking about is annual rent reviews, probably in line with inflation or consumer price index. And the landlord needs to give 2 months notice to the tenants when they want to increase the rent. Now, they can't just put it up whatever they want. It's got to be in line with some of those national statistics, inflation, CPI, etc. But what happens, I guess, if someone wants to put the rent up and then the tenant just keeps on paying what they were paying before? Well, you're not going to be able to get rid of them for at least 8 weeks. And, so it's all a lot of uncertainty that I don't think has been thought through very much. Another thing is landlords cannot just do blanket bans on certain types of tenants. So some people say, we don't want families, we don't want people on benefits, etc. You can't do that anymore. And also there has to be a really good reason why people can't have pets. And obviously during lockdown, we saw a lot of people go out and buy pets because they just wanted a bit of company. So a lot more tenants now have pets than maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Also, there's going to be a new landlord database on which all landlords have to be registered, or properties have to be registered. I don't see a problem with that personally. I think that's a good thing. And I think maybe that's one of the reasons the government want to do this, because they just don't know how many properties are out there. We've heard about regulations coming in for serviced accommodation. That's one of the things they're going to introduce for that as well. And there's going to be a new ombudsman, which again, I think is a good idea, which is going to handle disputes between tenants and landlords. Interestingly, landlords are going to be the people who pay for that. Tenants don't have to pay for that. Tenants can actually complain about landlords, but landlords can't complain about tenants. And actually, for a long time, many landlords have been saying there should be some sort of register of bad tenants. You've got a persistent bad tenant, there should be a register so that we can avoid renting to that person in the future. But some people have said, well, that might be an infringement on their human rights, so we can't really do that. So again, it does seem that quite a lot of things are stacked in the favor of tenants as opposed to being stacking in the favor of landlords. So what does this all mean for you? Well, I think we're going to see lots of landlords are going to be put off by this. New people thinking, oh, it's all too much hassle, too much uncertainty. I'm not going to get into property. And long-term landlords who've had it very different for many, many years, and they've had really good capital growth over the last 12 years, might say, well, you know what, maybe we should sell up some of our properties. Maybe we should cash in and no longer be in the game. So what all of this means is, I think, as we move on over the next couple of years, and we've already had more landlords than ever before selling up, partly due to taxation and legislation such as EPC requirements having a C banding by 2025. Now they push that back again a few years. All these things come in and cause uncertainty, cause pressure, and mean that landlords are going to be selling up. Now, when a landlord sells, you might get another landlord picking up that property, or it might be someone who wants to use it as a home. Either way, I think we're going to see a reduction in the amount of property available for rent, and that's actually going to put rents up. So in a way, this is not good for tenants. And this is exactly what's happened in Scotland with the rental reforms they're having up there, the rent caps and the eviction bans they increased. Many landlords said, well, I'm not going to do this anymore, and started selling up their properties. And so the shortage of properties has caused rents to go up. So actually, this policy of the Scottish government has really kind of backfired and not helped tenants, which is what they were doing it for in the first place, or so they claim. So I'd love to know, what are your thoughts about this? Do comment below. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are about these rental reforms. Are they good for tenants? Are they good for landlords? What do you think? Remember, they're not finalized yet. There's consultation, there's debate going on as well. And so there's lots still to be sorting out, and we have to wait and see the actual details. Now, I am going to be publishing videos with updates as and when these come out. So I really encourage you to make sure you subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon so you get notified whenever we bring a new video out. And then also, just press the like. I hope you've liked this video. I hope you got some value from it, some information. And if you have, like it so other people get to hear and see about the video as well. Until next time, I encourage you as ever to invest with knowledge, invest with skill. I do hope you got massive value from watching this YouTube video. I'd encourage you to click on the link below to come and do the online training with me. And I've got another video lined up for you, which I think is also going to be really useful, that you should watch once you've registered for the online training with me. So invest with knowledge, invest with skill. I'll see you very soon.